The elevator stopped with a soft shudder, and my son smiled like he'd finally gotten me where he wanted me. For minutes earlier, I'd signed the papers he slid across my kitchen table. 2 neat stacks, labeled with bright tabs, dressed up in the language of protection and simplifying things for everyone. I'd watched his pen hover as if my name was the last hinge, holding the whole family together. I'm 72, widowed, a grandfather twice over. I ran numbers for a living long before my son learned how to tie a tie. I'm calm by nature and by necessity. People mistake that for softness. They always have. Today, in a glass and steel building in downtown Seattle, my son mistook it for surrender. When the elevator stopped between floors, the lights didn't flicker. The music didn't cut out. It just paused, like the building itself was holding its breath. My son, Daniel, glanced at his watch and exhaled in practiced irritation. "Of course," he said, as if the world existed to inconvenience him. "Dad, you okay?" I looked at the stainless steel panel, the emergency phone, the mirror that made us look like men trapped inside a jewelry box. "I'm fine," I said. I didn't add what I was thinking, that the timing was too neat to be chance, that Daniel had been steering me toward this meeting with his lawyer like a tow truck pulling a dead car, that his wife, Marissa, had insisted on riding with us for support, but stood 2 feet away, silent, eyes scanning my face the way people scan a receipt. The elevator hummed once, then went still again. Daniel pressed the call button. He kept his voice light, helpful, performative concern, the kind that played well in front of witnesses. "Hi, yes, we're stuck," he said into the speaker. "My father's elderly. We have an appointment. Please hurry." Elderly. Not my father. Not the man who built the company that pays my mortgage. Just elderly. A category. A liability. Marissa finally spoke, soft as a scarf. "This is stressful," she said. "Maybe this is a sign we should slow down." Daniel shot her a look, sharp, quick. Not anger. Control. "We can't slow down," he said. "Not with everything happening." Everything happening. The smear campaign he hadn't told me about yet. The debt he hadn't admitted to. The clock he'd started without asking my permission. I kept my hands folded over my cane handle. My heart didn't race. I've sat through audits. I've watched men lose fortunes in a single afternoon and still make polite conversation over coffee. Panic is a luxury. I don't indulge. The speaker crackled. Building security asked if anyone was injured. Daniel answered for me. "No injuries," he said. "But my dad's, you know. He's not great with this stuff." I didn't correct him. I let him speak. Because I wanted him comfortable. Comfortable men make mistakes. The elevator jolted again, just enough to shift Marissa's weight. She steadied herself on the railing, and her wedding ring flashed in the fluorescent light. It wasn't the ring I'd given Daniel's mother to pass down. That one had gone missing after the funeral. This one was new, oversized, and meant to be seen. Daniel glanced at me. "Dad," he said, "just so you understand, after we meet with Russell, things get easier. No more handling payroll. No more dealing with vendors. You'll finally be able to relax." Russell, his attorney, a man I'd never hired, never met, yet whose name kept appearing in Daniel's sentences like an inevitability. "I'm already relaxed," I said. Daniel laughed like I told a joke. He didn't hear the edge. He'd never been good at hearing what wasn't handed to him. The truth was, I had felt the papers under my palm when I signed them. The slight grit of fresh toner. The expensive weight of legal stationery. The way the language tilted, subtle, careful, toward control. I'd signed anyway. Not because I didn't understand. Because I wanted to see how far they were willing to go. The elevator phone clicked off. Silence settled in again. Marissa's voice dropped, intimate. "Daniel," she said, "maybe we should tell him about the timeline." Daniel's jaw tightened. He kept his eyes on the closed doors, as if the metal could shield him from accountability. "Not now," he whispered back. Timeline. That was the first honest word I'd heard all morning. I looked at my son's reflection in the mirror panel. The expensive haircut. The cufflinks I'd bought him when he graduated college. The face that used to look like my wife's when he was little, open, unguarded. Now it looked like his lawyer's. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Until what?" Daniel blinked. He recovered fast. "Until the restructure," he said. It's normal. Business stuff. Business stuff. That's what men call betrayal when they want to sleep at night. The elevator finally lurched downward an inch, maybe two, and stopped again. Marissa inhaled sharply. Daniel pressed the button again, harder this time, as if force could change reality. I watched his hand, a fine tremor in his fingers. Not fear of the elevator, fear of the meeting upstairs, fear of being seen. I'd seen that tremor once before, years ago, when Daniel was 17, and I'd found the missing petty cash envelope in his backpack. He'd cried then, promised, sworn he'd never do it again. Back then, I believed his remorse meant something. Now I understood something else. Remorse is often just fear in nicer clothing. I shifted my cane slightly, the rubber tip squeaking against the elevator floor. Daniel's eyes flicked down to it. He hated that cane. Not because it inconvenienced me, because it made him look like the caretaker, because it suggested weakness, and weakness reflects poorly on the family brand. Daniel cared about appearances the way some men care about oxygen. The speaker crackled again. Maintenance is on the way, security said. Stay calm. It may take 10 to 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes. Enough time for people to talk when they think there's no escape. Daniel forced a laugh. Great, he said. Just great. Russell's going to love this. Marissa's gaze slid to me. Her voice stayed sweet. Your father is handling it well, she said, as if praising a well-trained dog. I nodded once. Polite. Neutral. Inside, I took inventory. They had me sign papers. They rushed me into a meeting. They avoided mentioning a timeline. And now, when the elevator conveniently trapped us, their masks were slipping. That wasn't coincidence. That was pressure. And pressure always leaves fingerprints. Daniel looked at me again, and his voice softened into something that tried to sound like love. Dad, he said, you know this is for the family, right? For Emma and Caleb. The grandkids. We need to make sure everything is protected. He said my grandchildren's names like talismans. Emma and Caleb. 8 and 6. Bright, trusting. The only two people in this story who didn't know they were being used. You're right, I said. Protection matters. Daniel relaxed a fraction. Marissa's shoulders eased. They thought I'd agreed. I hadn't. The papers I signed weren't the end. They were the beginning. Because while Daniel was busy drafting a cage for me, he'd forgotten something basic. I built the house he thinks he owns. Not the physical one in Bellevue with the clean lines and staged furniture. The legal house. The corporate structure. The trust framework. The operating agreements. The buy-sell clauses he'd never read because he'd always assumed I'd handle the boring parts. I'd done my job too well. He believed he could move pieces on a board without knowing the rules. The elevator shuddered again. The light stayed steady. The air felt cooler. Marissa spoke again, lower now, impatient. Daniel, she said, if we miss this window, we're in trouble. Window. There it was again. Daniel didn't deny it. He just clenched his jaw and turned to me with a look that was almost pleading, almost. Dad, he said, we need this signed and filed by Friday. Otherwise it gets messy. Friday. I did the math without moving my lips. Today was Monday. That gave them 4 days. 4 days to lock me out of my own company. 4 days to move money, rewrite authority, frame it as succession planning. 4 days to make me look confused if I objected. And then, in 2 weeks, Daniel's mysterious deadline, something bigger. A loan maturity, a lawsuit, a bankruptcy filing, something that would force a final transfer. I kept my voice even. Friday, I repeated. That soon. Daniel nodded quickly, relieved I wasn't fighting. It's just paperwork, he said. It's just formalizing what we already talked about. We hadn't talked about it. He talked at me, with Marissa nodding on cue, like a staged interview. I let a small silence stretch, long enough for Daniel to fill it. You know, he said, trying to sound casual. People have been asking questions. Vendors, the bank. They see your name on everything, and they worry. They worry about continuity. There it was. Not concern for my comfort. Concern for perception. Someone had been planting seeds. And I already knew who was good at planting. Marissa's sister, Lila, ran a lifestyle nonprofit and collected social circles like jewelry. She'd never liked me. Said I was cold. Said I controlled everything. She'd once told Marissa, at a Christmas dinner I paid for, that men like me hoard power until they die. I'd heard her. I'd smiled. I'd passed the gravy. Cold men endure. Then they decide. I turned my head slightly toward Marissa. Who's been asking questions? I asked. Marissa blinked just once. The sweet mask held. Oh, she said. Just people. You know. Everyone loves you. They just want to make sure you're okay. Everyone. That vague word people use when they're hiding names. Daniel jumped in. It's not a big deal, he said. It's just optics. Optics. Finally, an honest sentence. The elevator groaned softly, then began to move, inching down. Slowly, like a reluctant confession. Daniel exhaled. Marissa's posture reset. Their faces smoothed back into the versions they preferred to wear. But the damage was done. They'd shown me the outline of the trap, and they'd given me the first clear date. Friday. For days. And then whatever was coming in 14. I stared at the closed doors. I thought of my wife, Ruth, and the way she used to say, quiet and certain, that you could tell who someone was by how they behaved when no one could leave the room. She would have understood this moment. She would have hated it. The elevator descended, stopped briefly, then continued. The panel above the doors blinked. 14. 13. 12. Daniel's phone vibrated. He glanced at it and turned the screen away from me too quickly. I didn't ask to see it. I didn't need to. The way he held it told me enough. I let my face stay calm. Inside, I began preparing, because by the time that elevator reached the lobby, I wasn't just a father being managed. I was a man with 4 days to quietly verify what I'd signed, 14 days to meet their deadline with my own, and a lifetime of documents they'd forgotten I still controlled. And I already knew the coldest part of justice. It doesn't require raised voices, only signatures in the right order.